Okay, so the spot I'm going to flip to in our notes. Let's just fill in our notes, flipping. We've done. This is a recap spot in your notes. Okay, so the first thing we learned was transformations. So you're going to answer me the following. Your options are these. It could narrow, widen, it could flip downward, it could move left, right, or up, down. Okay, so tell me for A, there's two answers you need to tell me. It does something and something. So I gave you your options. You could say it narrows or widens or flips downward, it goes up, down, left, right. Those are your options. Narrows and moves down. Because that's a number that's not in the brackets. That's an up, down, a Y stuff. Okay, B has two answers. It does something and something. It'll flip downward. I don't want you to write that it goes down there because moving something down is different than flipping it downward, right? So careful of your words. And 4 to the which? It's going to move left. Okay, question C. It will widen and it will move right. And the last question, you need to tell me 3 things. I'm expecting 3 answers on that one. It does something, something, and something.
Narrower?
Narrow is one thing it does.
Flip downward, and 5 to the left.
Flipped downward.
5 up, yeah.
And I heard up 5. So if you see this word on your test, transformations, it means those words. Okay. Vertex. Let's do the vertex of this and the vertex of that. So this is, I'm not sure if you like to have that little paper in front of you. Some of you like to have that paper in front of you. So this one looks like the first. Okay. I'm not going to give you this on your test where I tell you to do opposite, opposite. You don't get that info on your test. So in this form, I need to memorize that it's opposite, opposite. But here's the hint. You get the form. I give you this. So when you see something with a minus in it, it's going to mean opposite. So the vertex is? Okay, this B, it's in the second form, so I don't give you this stuff over here. So once you look at that, you should see the H part is a subtract and the K part is a plus. So that should tell you this would be an opposite value and this would be a same value. So this is 1, 8. Okay, so again on your test, you're not going to get that stuff. You're just going to get this equation and this equation. So that's your hints. Negative means opposite, plus means the same. Okay, what is our slope to each one? So This first one is 2, -1. That's what I'm looking at. So a slope tells me the direction of opening. So a 2 slope will be going upward. And the direction with a -1 slope means it will be going down. You can either draw me a little thing or write me a word. That's okay. Okay, axis of symmetry, before we think about what it is, how do we always start writing it? As an equation with a what? X equals. Half a point deduction if you forget to write that. So that is a very common half point deduction on the test. X equals, and which X value does it cut through? -3, so I look at the first part of the vertex, the X part. This cuts through 1. Domain, so we have the same every time. It goes forever left and right. Okay, range. I have to visualize that. It's going in that direction. So it's going to go from some value to infinity. Some value to infinity.
-4.
And then the value I pick is the height value. Right? Heights are y. Okay? You would lose points if you wrote it flip-flopped, because you have to write it in the precise down to up. So if you flip-flop that and tell me this before that, you'll get a deduction, okay? And do you notice how I did a square for exact? And this one, we are heading like that, downward. So I'm starting low. Negative infinity is the low. To the highest height of, and then a number with a square bracket, and that number is 8, the height number, the y number. Okay, the y-intercepts, so we've learned that we got to make the x be 0. So start with your equation. And in your equation, you are going to put a 0 in to the x spot. Okay, do the bracket. So 3 bracket squared. That would be 9. I'm moving that. You can move it later if you want. I'm going to move it now. So work out your algebra here and then check that we're the same. So plug the 0 in and do all your algebra. Okay, equation 2. So I wrote the equation, but instead of writing it with an x, I replaced that x with a 0. Okay, so bed mass is tricky on this one. I get a lot of mistakes on this question on the test. I probably will put one on there where it's got the negative in the front. So how am I going to apply that? So I'm going to need to do this first, because bed mass says to do all that stuff before the times of this. Okay, so negative 1 squared ends up being a positive 1. Okay, now is when you apply this negative sign. Are we understanding where I'm getting that bed mass idea from? Okay, this is a multiplier, so it's an afterthought of the bracket and the exponent. Okay, so I'm telling you, I might trick you with that on the test. It's a one that causes a lot of errors. Understanding that negative in the front. Okay, so graphing. So the first one, I can put my vertex on there. So -3, -4 was that vertex. And the y-intercept is 14. Well, can't really fit that on there. So let's make an over-up chart. 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. Okay, that's basic. Are we basic? No, because our slope was 2. So I'm going to go over 1 up 2. And I'm going to go over 2 up 8. Remember that physically your graph needs to look like it's going to cross at 14 on that axis, right? So don't cross over too quickly. Okay, and look, it did narrow. It's narrower than normal. Okay, and then the second one is 1, 8. So that's what that looks like. And we had a y-intercept of 7, so I can actually just put that on there because it fits. Okay. Over, up, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3, 9. Basic. Are we basic? No, the slope is -1. So I'm just going to put negatives in front of those numbers. So we're going to do that pattern, but in the downward direction. So 1, 1, 2, 4. Okay, and on the test, I kind of have this same format. So on the test, you'll have a question like that, get me all that, and graph it. And when you graph it, you're going to have to do 5 points. So you can see there's my 5 points. Okay, what if we switch this to general form? So on your test, your paper will have this equation, but it will not have what to do. It will not have that written on there.
Why not?
Because that's me telling you what to do, the strategy. Okay, so you just get that equation, so you have to have it in your head that you got to do the -b over 2a. Okay, so here we go. -b means to do what number?
-10.
-10. 2 times, what is the value for the a? 1. And then when we have that, we need to now plug that in. So what is -5 squared So that's what I'm trying to figure out once I plug it in. So if you're a calculator person, please make sure you're putting brackets on that. I'm going to do it in my head. So positive 25, subtract 50, what is that, negative 9? Okay, so there's my vertex. Okay, on this question, I wouldn't ask it on the other question. What is the x-intercept?
16. No.
That's a different answer. 2 down is that answer. What do you do with an x-intercept? What does that mean to do? Y equals 0. So then if I do that, this is what I look like. Okay, so y is 0. So now what do I do in math if I see something like that? Factor. Okay, so multiplies to 16. Are you going to pick 8 times 2 plus plus? Because it multiplies to 16 and adds to 10. And then you're asking what number would I put in there to cause that to be a 0? Okay. I'm going to skip 2 of these questions, but let's just do the y-intercept. So if x is 0, then we end up at 16. So that one's a little faster because on this, you just 0, 0, boom, just 16.
Will you take off 1 if we jump on it y equals 16?
No, just writing 16 there. That's good. Okay, negative 5, negative 9. I'm going to draw a point. I'm going to kind of pretend there's a 16 on there. And what else do we have? Negative 2 and negative 8. Okay, so these are the 4 points we've discovered. So the question that we skipped says confirm the vertex is on the axis of symmetry. So here's my question. What number ended up being right in the middle of those two? Negative 5. Did our vertex land on that? Mm-hmm. Okay, find me a point symmetric to the y-intercept. So here's my y-intercept. So where's its partner? Where's its partner going to be? What's the coordinate over there? So here's a thought. How much distance space is there in that from the axis to that point? 5. So I need to move 5 in that direction. So that means it would be at negative 10, comma, what would the height be? 16, because it's straight across. Okay, so you see how I use a little problem solving to get it? I flipped the distance this way and this way. Okay, number 4. Okay, negative b over 2a is the vertex on this. So again, general form. So negative b over 2a makes a what? What do I put for a negative b? Positive 5 over 2 times 2. So if you're doing this in your calculator, this is what your calculator would have to look like. Or I recommend doing that first, and then you can just go 5 divided by 4. But if you don't do that first, you have to make sure there's brackets on that piece, okay? So 5 divided by 4 should give us 1.25, right? Plugging it in. So that, I'm sure we're all now using our calculator, which is fine. Is anybody's number matching mine? 12.875? Good? Those numbers? Okay, and I would expect you to do that one in your calculator. The y-intercept should be fast. 16, because that means the x's are 0, which means 0, 0, 16. Slope, which one is the slope? 2. What would the domain of this be? Negative to positive infinity. The range, well, for me, I need to visualize that because it's opening that way. For Amber again.
If we have like a decimal like 12.875, how many decimals do you want us to put?
Normally 2, but because that one was just that, I just kept it.
Okay.
But if it was like 12.8, if it was something like that, then just go 12.88. Okay, so our range goes from a number to infinity. It's that style, a number to infinity. So what is that height number? 12.875. Okay, so I'm looking at that. So my vertex would be in this quadrant, right? And my y-intercept is higher than that. What do you know about the x-intercepts of this? What are the x-intercepts of this question? Where does it cross this line? It doesn't. There's no x-intercepts which happen. Okay? And that would be an example of one that won't have any. Okay, I'm going to, sorry, we're going to jump. Okay, we're going to talk about how to relate quadratic info to real life. I'm in the word problem section, and this is the very last one. Okay, so question 4 is where I'm starting. So we're jumping around here. This is a parabola, so obviously a quadratic equation. So we've talked about y-intercepts. Pretending that this is representing a ball being launched from somewhere, and this is what it does, right? A ball, you throw a ball in your hand, it goes up, it goes down, okay? In this situation, what would this tell me? So it is a 50, so 50 is what in words? 50 is going to be the, something to do with the time or the height? It is the height at the start. It's where you're starting from. Does that make sense to you? The time is 0 at that spot. So it's the start. So obviously I'm standing on top of a building or something and I'm throwing this. Okay. The next most important point is the vertex. So what is the vertex telling me? We're getting to the highest point. So the x is telling me the when it reached highest. Does that make sense? The x is the time. So here it would be, it took 3 seconds to get to the top. And the y tells us the highest height, which if I was to answer, it'd be 200, whatever, meters, feet. Okay? Then we've talked about x-intercepts. So what do parabolas tell us is happening at the x-intercept? What's visually going on with your, let's say you threw a ball. What happened there? It hits the ground. So this is the when part of it. Time tells us the when something is happening, when it hits the ground. Okay? So we're going to do question 3, and then you're going to work. So a frog is sitting on a rock, and it jumps into a pond. So I'm not even sure how I would draw a frog. I can't even visualize what a frog looks like.
I'd say give it a like.
Whatever. Mine more looks like a turtle. There's my frog. And it jumps, so obviously it's going to head upward. And then it's going to jump into the water. So here's the question. How long does it take for the frog to reach its max height? And what is the highest height the frog reaches? So when I think about that question, what one of these important points am I thinking about? The vertex. Okay, so let's find the vertex. How do you find the vertex in this form? That's general form. So how do I find the vertex? Negative b over 2a, plug in. Okay, ready? Negative 150 over 2a. Okay, if you want to do that in your calculator, if you're doing it with brackets is important. I'll go 3 decimal places on it. Okay, are we matching because we did brackets on it? Okay, negative 490 plug in squared 150 plug in do our numbers match? Okay, we didn't even answer the question though. You have to answer the question. So my first question was, how long did it take? So which part answers me that? The how long did it take to get there? This one or this one is the how long part? The x is the how long. So 0.153 and then it says seconds. Because time is in seconds. And then the second question is, what is the highest the frog reaches? So that is the height part. And then it says to measure it in centimeters. Okay, so just understanding now, connecting that vertex to words.